Today on the show, we learn the rules of survival and say bitter goodbyes. Welcome to Lore Party, the podcast that explores the stories, characters, and universes of our favorite video games. I am Lawrence.
And I'm Connor. And we're back at it again. Episode 2.
Take 2.
We liked it so much we did it again.
Yes. Yeah, our backstory is this is the second time recording it because of a hilarious snafu. So there's some hot takes there and some just like probably off the cuff stuff that will never see the light of day. You guys are welcome.
You can't catch lightning in a bottle twice, unfortunately. We're going to try, though.
Yes.
Technical issues, what are you going to do? They happen. But suffice to say, episode 2 of HBO's The Last of Us series, was another crowd pleaser, at least if you pull this crowd of 2. I think we both really enjoyed the premiere, the opening episode, and this new one, number 2, titled Infected, was another slam dunk, I think. So.
And ironically, if we're going to keep this theme of 2s going for like a couple more minutes, there was a 22% audience increase from the first episode to the second one. So,
wow.
Yeah. So maybe this was just destiny.
Yeah, everything's coming up deuces. I'm gonna hold up the peace sign the entire time.
Whole time peace sign. We'll be saying peace to someone. So,
whoa! Spoiler alert. Hey, no, yeah, we'll get to all of that. We will, as usual. If you were here for the last episode recap, you know the deal by now. We'll just break down what happened in this new episode of The Last of Us. All the plot points, all the set pieces, all the big events, and then get into some thoughts, reactions, and just our overall impressions of it. So, can't wait.
Oh, I also have one more 2 thing, if you believe it or not.
Let's do it.
Yes. As of this recording, The Last of Us was renewed for a second season.
Season number 2. Which of course, unfortunately, really quick tangent, has to my frustration has renewed the Last of Us Part 2 discourse, and people being upset at the sequel to the game and a certain character killing another certain character, all that good. I had hoped that was all dead, but the news of a second season of the adaptation has unfortunately brought that back to life.
Yes.
So anyway, that's just my little soapbox, but we will without further ado get into our recap of episode 2, Infected, of the HBO series. But first, we will take a really short break to hear from our sponsors, and then we'll be right back and jump into it. So stick around.
Now that we're back, before we get started, we need to do this housekeeping real quick. So, you guys know the drill. We want to hear from you. So send us some emails, send us some DMs, send us some messages, whatever. 2 at a time, please, to podcast@loreparty.com.
That's
right.
Is
podcast@loreparty.com.
That's right. The new rule is if you send us an email, you have to send us 2 emails at a time. It's
yes.
We only accept doubles of your messages.
That's how I know you're real fans.
That's how I know you were listening. Yeah.
Yes.
But if you want to get in touch with us directly, you can find Lawrence at producedby_LK on Twitter and Twitch. Remember that underscore. It's important. Producedby_LK on Twitter and Twitch.
And you can find Connor on Twitter and his website. Twitter is Connor Howard VO. That is Connor with an ER. Mm-hmm. And website is of the same name, Connor Howard VO. That is Connor with a ER.
That's right. As much as we both like to hear from you, the entire team at the Lore Party podcast network would love to hear from you as well. You can always get in touch with us broadly on Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch at lore_party. That's LORE_party. Don't be shy. We won't bite. We love new friends.
Yes, we won't bite. Neither of us are infected. and, and so now, without further ado, we are going to kick off our spoiler-free recap of episode 2. Just
That's
kidding.
right.
It's full of spoilers. It's the entire episode, so maybe watch it before you listen to this.
That would be wise. Yeah, be caught up first. But hey, well, if you aren't caught up now, you're about to be. So
right. So we start off in September of let's say 2023. Jesus, we start in September of 2003, back in the good old George Bush universe.
W's world.
Do you call it the Bushyverse?
The Bushverse.
Yes, we're in the Bushverse of 2003. Mm-hmm. We find ourselves in Jakarta, Indonesia, where military officers pull a woman away from her meal at a restaurant and bring her with them. She's revealed to be Dr. Ibu Ratna, which, if I pronounced that wrong, I'm sorry. Don't get me, internet.
I think you were close, yeah.
She is a respected and experienced professor of mycology, and she is brought to a hospital under guard by armed soldiers and asked to examine a sample taken from a human subject. Dr. Ratna quickly deduces that the sample is a strain of cordyceps fungus, but is skeptical when told that the sample came from a human, claiming that such thing is impossible. What?
Yeah, it's established that she's an expert in her field of mycology, which of course, if you're not aware, mycology is the study of fungi. And yeah, it's just kind of accepted that cordyceps can't survive in a human body. That doesn't make sense at all. But to the military officer, like the general or whatever, some high-ranking guy, the look on his face is like, oh, well, you're about to find out. And find out she does. Dr. Ratna is next time we see her, she's in a hazmat suit, and entering this sealed examination room where a dead woman lies upon the slab, apparently with a gunshot wound in her head. That's what it looks like, at least, like a bullet hole in her forehead. And Dr. Ratna finds bite marks on this dead woman's leg. And she's obviously disturbed by this because they look like human teeth marks or whatever. And she asks the officer, did this come from a human? And he just nods grimly back at her. It's very tense, and you can tell he knows how serious it is, and she's starting to realize how serious this is. And so Dr. Ratna continues her examination, gets like pliers, kind of like forceps, I guess you call them, and starts pulling, goes into the subject's mouth and starts pulling out these crazy little fungal growths. They look like pea shoots, like they kind of look like a vegetable. They kind of look like a stringy vegetable, but it's these really creepy things she starts pulling out of the dead woman's mouth. And then they start growing out of the mouth, like toward her, just sort of eerily extending out of the dead person's mouth. And who can blame her? Dr. Ratna flees the room in terror, just runs away. Like,
get the hell out.
Yeah, get the hell out of there. She's clearly never encountered anything like this before. It's unprecedented and very terrifying.
And meanwhile, the general is just like all super, man is just super terrified, and he's just standing there the whole time. It's like a perfect, could have been a perfect Captain Phillips moment. Like he could have, like, I'm the expert now. Like I am the mycology expert.
Your research is now mine. It's martial law. We're already there.
Instead, man is just fucking shook. He's like, yeah, now you know how I feel.
Yeah,
but
he's like, yeah, you're up to speed now. That's what we're dealing with.
Yeah, this is fucked up. Mm-hmm. And so afterwards, he brings Dr. Ratna a cup of tea and explains that the subject was discovered roughly 30 hours ago and was an employee of a nearby flour and grain mill. Ratna remarks that such materials would serve as the perfect substrate for a parasitic fungus. Mm-hmm. The subject apparently attacked and bit several of her coworkers and was shot by police when she attacked them.
Yeesh.
The people bit were also, they were, rounded up, and they were held for observation and executed once they became violent. I wonder why they became violent.
Interesting
You know?
correlation there.
So we find out, though, however, there are multiple potentially infected people still unaccounted for, including the person that bit the subject. So there was I think there was 14 people that were unaccounted, that were missing from the factory, and then one person that started the whole process.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think Dr. Rodna's question was like, but who bit her? And the general just says, we don't know.
man, I had no idea.
No answers for her. And you can tell how obviously terrified she was, because her teacup starts just trembling in her hand like it's an earthquake. It's crazy.
Oh yeah, there was not enough. You could not give this lady calming enough tea after
There's not enough tea in the world for her.
Yeah, I'd be like, I need the kind of tea that's whiskey, because but the officer asks her how the infection could be treated or vaccinated against, if there's any sort of cure, to which Ratna replies that there's no cure. I've been doing this my whole life, and no, there's nothing you can do about this. So when asked how the spread can be detained, she just coldly tells him to start bomb this city and everyone in it. Yeah. And then she asks to be taken home, which the look on his face was like, fuck, I knew this, but I didn't want to be right.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like hearing it out loud from the more knowledgeable person he brought in to help him with this. He's just deflated. The look on his face, he looks like a helpless child basically in that situation, just hopeless. And how solemn Dr. Ratna is, how dead serious she is. This is as serious as it can possibly get. There's no hope of curing, so your only chance is to just destroy the city so that this doesn't get out.
Yep, no cure, just kill.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I noticed, I went back and watched this episode again. And one thing I noticed that I thought was interesting in this part, you could kind of tell that they figured that this was the answer all along, because they had other scientists that went and conducted the autopsy, got samples, went and investigated this, and that there has to be some sort of military person that's we just gotta kill everybody. That's the only we had to put down however many people so far. That seems to be the only way to stop this. And it was fuck, I hope we don't have to do that, because that'll be damn near impossible.
Right.
So let's bring in an expert, and then it's
let's get a second opinion. And yeah, it's one of those things you don't want to resort to just militarily enforced containment, lethal force to contain something that affects people on the individual level. But it's kind of you have no other recourse.
And it's nearly impossible, because you have to kill everybody that's infected.
Yeah.
And you miss one person, that infection's going to come back fast as hell.
And it's actually what we see in the first episode with Joel and his family trying to escape Austin, Texas, where the reason Sarah gets shot in the beginning and killed is that there's just immediately a military response, which is to just contain. Don't let anyone out of the city, because the city is where the infection's coming from. If you let anyone out, they could be infected and not know it. They could carry it somewhere else and spread the infection. So no one can leave the city alive, basically, was what that policy was. And that's kind of what Dr. Rotten is referring to here, or alluding to, almost teasing what's gonna happen to the world. It's a terrifying scene. It's a vignette of the world we know, the normal world, transitioning into a world we hopefully never know, which is the world that falls apart because of this infection. It's terrifying.
George Bush America to George Bush Earth.
The W years to the post W years, the bad version of the post W years. Yeah,
this is W. I'm just gonna say WW2 first.
Oh God.
Oh, this is W2.
That is our goes to opening credits after that, and then cuts back to present day of the series. We're back to Boston in 2023, and we open on dawn breaking, like daylight breaking on Ellie, who wakes up under a ray of sunlight in an overgrown, partially collapsed building, which is a beautiful shot, by the way, just the sun coming through the roof and the grass all around her, the moss. And when she wakes up, she notices that Joel and Tess are a few feet away, watching her very intently, very closely. And Joel has his rifle, his automatic rifle from earlier, just at the ready. Like he's ready to start blasting anytime he needs to.
Yes.
And you get the feeling that they were watching her probably all night. They maybe didn't even sleep, or they slept in shifts to ensure that she didn't succumb to her infection overnight. And,
I know for sure Joel didn't sleep.
Oh yeah,
that dude didn't close his eyes. He was like,
yeah. At the very least, we know Joel wasn't taking chances. He was like, "No, I'm keeping my finger on the trigger here. That's no chances." And even though Ellie survived the night, she's still herself in the morning. Joel is still very skeptical of how she claims to be immune. She, kind of made that claim in the last episode, and he wants to take her back to the QZ. He's like, "No, this is not a good idea." His survival instincts or his alarms are ringing. Like, no, we got to turn around. But Tess seems convinced. She's like looking at Ellie, like, well, she made it through the night. She hasn't turned yet. So she decides we're going to keep going. And then they start questioning Ellie. They want to know what she means to Marlene. Like, why did Marlene have Ellie in her custody? And Ellie tells them that Marlene found her after she got bitten. And they continue to press. And she reluctantly reveals that the Fireflies are working on a cure at a base somewhere out west. Now, as soon as she mentions a cure, Joel just scoffs and laughs it off like, yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, right. He's heard it all before, and he's resolute now. He puts his foot down and tells Tess, like, this is not going to end well. This is a fool's errand. We're idiots for even considering this. But again, Tess talks him into continuing the job. Because what we got from the last episode, she calls the shots in that partnership.
Yeah. What I loved about it was they both said miracle cure. He was like, miracle cure. And she's like, yeah, I'm working on miracle cure. It's like, This motherfucker was like, God damn it. I've heard this shit 1,000 times.
Yeah, you can hear the rolling of his eyes, and he's like, miracle. He spitting the words out, miracle cure. He's just so disgusted by the idea because it's so high-minded and optimistic and naive to him. It's just like that's bullshit. Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, Joel, you might as well have kept going on anyways, because you killed your you were the plug and you killed your the guy you were selling drugs to. So there goes your side hustle.
Yeah, you kind of burned your bridges back in Boston anyway, probably.
Yeah, it's like I was trying to get that car battery from the guy and I beat him. So
yeah, he might be dead. We actually don't. I don't know if we got confirmation that Joel beat him to death, but it's possible. It's very possible.
Yeah.
But so what's funny is this scene ends with Joel just kind of muttering to Tess if she so much as twitches, and then Ellie obviously starts mocking starts faking a twitch, and Tess shuts it down immediately stop, that's not funny, don't do that.
Right. Man is wholeheartedly triggered.
Yeah.
And I was like, this guy's gonna put you down.
Yeah, don't give him an excuse, Ellie. That's not smart.
Yeah, I was like, you are literally poking the bear. So
of course, Ellie's infamous inability to read the room and know when to joke about things and when not to.
Yeah, it's
coming into play there.
Man has just got years of just compounded trauma, and
don't try.
Yeah, just don't. He is gonna fire that gun. Mm-hmm. But as the group, they get out of the building. And then they venture into the overgrown ruins of Boston. Mm-hmm. Of Boston, past several Dunkin' Donuts.
Boston.
Yeah, Boston.
Past all the packed cars.
So you guys, we're going through Boston. Everything is cool. Ellie, asks and asks for a gun, and they are like, hell no, we're not giving a gun to a kid. Come on now, just because it's the apocalypse. It doesn't mean we're an army.
We're trusting you, a 14-year-old with a gun. Yeah,
right. I'm not trying to get shot while I'm trying to keep myself alive. She then starts to just kind of barrage Joel and Tess with questions about the infected infesting the city, the creators from the military bombing everything, to Kingdom Come. and she kind of queries about the world outside of the QZ.
Mhm.
And Tess asks Ellie. Tess then kind of flips the script on Ellie and starts asking her own questions, like, how is she bitten? And to which Ellie just kind of tells her that she snuck out into an abandoned and restricted mall inside of the QZ, which, Tess is like, wow, you have some, balls for doing that.
You got some
Uh,
balls on you, sister. I love that line. That was funny.
but, Tess also asks her, since she, reveals that she was out in the mall, if she
Mhm.
was there alone, to which she pauses or to which Ellie just kind of pauses and says, yeah, but
Mhm.
we can tell that that is probably not the truth.
Yeah.
Given that, given some things from the last episode, and given the fact that that was like very, the mood kind of dipped there.
It was definitely an evasive answer, and we can. It's pretty clear she's not telling the whole truth. I guess this is outside baseball, kind of getting meta here, but like as players of the games, we know that Ellie was in fact with a very close friend of hers when she was infected, a girl named Riley, who Marlene mentioned in the last episode. But in the context of the TV show, we don't really know any of that yet. So, but we can tell, like, oh yeah, Ellie's not being completely forthcoming about this.
Yeah.
We can assume that's either because, well, the whole Riley, based on what we saw in the last episode, Riley is a very sore subject with Ellie, and there might
Yep.
be survivor's guilt there. It could be both. It could be a lot of things, but yeah. So Ellie evades that topic for now.
Yeah. And then, like, she kind of deflects and starts talking about infected again.
Mm-hmm.
And she wants to know if the stories that she heard were exaggerations, like, including some tales of like split open heads. They can see in the dark like bats.
Mm-hmm.
Which we all know that is a classic clicker. Got a
Yep.
big old busted up mushroom head, and they
Yep.
scream and use echolocation. It's
That's
absolutely
them.
fucking frightening.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's-
Which
Dude.
hold your horses. We might we might be seeing them again sooner than you think.
And then she even talks about what I loved about this is she also says like, oh, is there one that can like fling like acid at you, like fling balls of bomb like acid bombs or whatever at you, and they just kind of laugh it off. And we all know if you played the video game that like that's a thing. So
Yeah. Yeah, she's
So-
talking about bloaters right there, and it's funny because Joel and Tess like kind of laugh that off, like, yeah, right, okay, don't believe everything you hear. So that we can infer from that, like, this version of Joel and Tess, they've never seen a bloater before, but they have seen clickers before, because when Ellie asks about the ones that can see in the dark, they both get really quiet, and Tess just like kind of glances at Joel, gives him like a worried look, like, oh shit, she knows about clickers, but we don't want to tell her. They don't confirm for her that those are real. They kind of just leave it there, which is great foreshadowing, amazing foreshadowing. Now that I like, I've watched this episode a couple times, and looking back on it, like, that was really good foreshadowing, and just, a natural reaction for people who know better but don't want to scare this kid who's never seen the outside of the QZ before, I guess.
Yeah, because there's a big, as we'll see, and we'll talk about in a second. There's this like surprise and assumption that Ellie doesn't know shit about the outside world, which is like kind of makes sense. She's 14, so this is the only life she's ever known, and it's the only safety she's ever known has been inside of basically quarantine Boston.
Mm-hmm. So, there's all this back and forth, Ellie just kind of asking about the outside world, and Tess and Joel just sort of making small talk as they lead Ellie toward the Capitol building, the Massachusetts State House, which is their goal. And to get there, they start taking a shortcut through a flooded hotel, or like they're going to get the lay of the land from the top of the hotel. And they go into the lobby of the hotel, which is like just covered in water, flooded. And that's where we find out Ellie reveals that she can't swim. She's like, oh, by the way, can't swim. But Joel kind of like gives her grief, like, it's literally waist deep. You're fine. Don't worry about it.
His like tiny jump in the water.
Yeah.
I was like, this man is not heavy.
That's funny. So there's a lot of banter going on. Like, oh, there's not a lot of pools in the QZ. How was I going to learn, and stuff like that? And but they keep going. They make their way up to the upper levels of the building. But they find that the hallway they need to continue down has collapsed. Like the ceiling just fell in on the hallway. They have to find a way around. So Tess goes on ahead alone by herself to kind of clear the way for them. And this leaves Joel and Ellie to just wait there, sit around, and make very awkward small talk while they wait. And it's hilarious because, Joel makes the attempt first. Like, Ellie just pulls out her switchblade, starts goofing around with it. And Joel tries to engage her, like, it's a nice knife. Where'd you learn to do that or whatever? And she goes, the circus, just fucking with him, and he clams up. And so she's like, dude, her Bella Ramsey's eye roll was so good here. She just goes, where are you from? Just making the attempt to make small talk again. And so we learn, Joel's from Texas originally. He shares that with her. And he also shares that Tess is originally from Detroit, Michigan. And there's, again, this back and forth, like, oh, you know where that is? And she's like, yeah, I go to school, asshole. Like, of course I know where Detroit is. And so, just very smart aleck energy from Ellie. It's in a top form here. But Joel declines to answer when she asks him if there's anything between him and Tess. He's just pass.
Yeah, not talking about that.
No, yeah. Next question. And again, Ellie asks Joel, how'd you end up in Boston? Again, he says pass. It's just so he doesn't like talking about himself. He doesn't want to go there. And Ellie changes the topic. She asks about the infected. She wants to know more about like how long they live, what the infected are like, and whether Joel has killed any. And he says, yeah, quite a few. Like, kind of just implies, yeah, more than a few, more than I've really bothered to count. And she asks him, is it hard knowing that they were people once? And he just says, sometimes. So.
And there was another thing that I liked about that scene is like when he like, have you killed it? Or she asked something about infected, mm-hmm. like how long they live.
Yeah.
And he was like, some live like a couple months. Mm-hmm. And then die, and that's how you get like the people that are basically stick to the walls,
right?
But then some, he's like, I've been walking around for what did they say, like 20 years or something?
Years. Yeah, since the whole thing started.
Yeah. So it's like kind of because like I know that throughout the game you always saw infected like plastered to walls and shit, but it was like I was like, oh, did someone kill it? But like it is interesting to know that they can kind of just drop dead, but like when they do drop dead, they make spread the infection basically.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know the mechanics of like what determines whether an infected lives for 20 years and eventually becomes a bloater, or if they just live that long and then find a place to make start a spore colony. And it's also interesting because in the game, infected will just sit there, grow into the wall or the floor or whatever, and start giving off spores that'll just infest an area. And that's when, characters in the game have to put their masks on. But in the show, it's more about, I guess, the colonies of vines, which we'll get into later. But it's like, what decides how long an infected lives? Is it environmental? Do they just lay down and decide to die one day, or do they decide I'm going to be a bloater? I'm just going to stick around or whatever.
Yeah, I wonder if it's eating to some extent, which is all speculation.
They could starve or something, or the host body starves. Who knows?
There's a lot of things out there. This is weird. It's weird. It doesn't make sense. And no one's ever going to give you the context that you need.
We'll probably never know, but they're fun to think about.
Yeah. But, after just kind of getting to the top of the hotel and clearing the way, the group comes upon a really discouraging sight. Yeah. They're a long way around that was supposed to be safe is like now teeming with a horde of infected bodies. They're just kind of littered across the street in like very like human centipede fashion. They're just like withering in the sunlight. And they're connected together pretty much is what it seems like. They're moving to left and right all at the same time. And it's like
a wave at a football stadium. It's like the
kind of lazy wave, like the full drunk wave. Everybody's just like passed out, but still trying to participate.
It's like
but
that,
but it is like just like fucking weird because I'm like, oh, I've never seen this before. Like even people that have played the game, like never seen this crap. Yeah, and it's just weird. Tess explains to Ellie that like the fungus grows underground, as we were talking about, and like this means that the infected can detect movement across vast distances. It's like the ultimate booby trap. You step on a vine and you're going to get overrun in a matter of minutes.
Yeah. They find out where you are. They come after you in large groups.
Yes. Yeah. Know where you're, they know when you're sleeping. They know when you're awake.
They check their list twice. And,
But they, Tess actually tells Ellie that you're not immune to being ripped apart. You
Mm,
understand? It's important. I'm trying to keep you alive. Like Tess is really invested.
yeah.
She is like she believes in this, which is like a very it's like core to her character here. Like she's like you could she is the one that's invested. She's calling the shots here, and she is invested in protecting Ellie because
Yeah.
she believes in a cure and she believes in immunity, even though she's not explicitly stating it. She's still treating it like it's a job.
Right.
But like, so with no other option, they have to go the short way, which was supposed to be the deadly way. So this
Mm.
takes us to the good old Colonial History Museum of Boston.
Oh boy, the Boston Colonial Museum. It's yeah, it's funny. Yeah, earlier in the episode, Joel and Tess referred to the long way and the short way, and the short way being the one that's most dangerous. But it's kind of like, hey, the long way just became the most dangerous option. So here we are. Like we have to go through the museum, and when they get there, the front door completely overgrown with fungal colonies, just mushrooms everywhere. And so you look at that and you think, I'm not fucking going in there. There's no way.
Nope.
But Joel, he does this like kind of Bear Grylls move where he like examines the spores. He like kind of breaks one open and like dusts it in his fingers, and he's like, oh, okay, they're dead, they're dry, inactive, we're good. So it's crazy. Like there's a whole science to determining if these growths are a danger or not. And
Gotta taste it a little bit, just like it's dead.
You probably shouldn't put it in your mouth. But hey, it's the only way to be sure. But yeah, it's funny.
That's the Bear Grylls thing. It's like,
yeah,
I think I'm infected.
yeah. So they figure, okay, it's safe enough. But they do tell Ellie, like, hey, this is serious. Like, I need you to pay attention and stay close behind us. Like, don't let us out of your sight, or vice versa. And they get their flashlights out, they get their guns ready, and they very cautiously venture inside. And inside they find even more infected bodies and spore-ridden corpses everywhere. But they also appear inert and just they've been rotten for a long time, so they're not a threat. However, they do find one fresh human corpse that's not overgrown. This body has wounds that suggest that this person was killed both recently and very gruesomely. This is not a good way to go. Blood everywhere. And you can tell this is a bad sign because Tess sees this and becomes visibly shaken. She's like kind of starting to panic a little bit. She like kind of looks at Joel, her face falls, and she starts trying to rationalize the situation. She's like, oh, well, maybe he was attacked outside and came in here to die. And, maybe she's just hoping that whatever killed this person is not still around, not still inside the building. It's like, I don't want to meet whatever just killed this guy.
No, good God, no, because he is shredded.
Yeah, it's ugly, yeah. And so, again, still only way out is forward. So Joel stoically and sternly demands complete silence from Ellie. He kind of like, as soon as he knows that there may be danger afoot, he kind of looks Ellie in the face and says, from now on, we are silent. Not quiet, silent. And then he leads the way upstairs.
Yep, and so they pass another mass of desecrated corpses and fungal growth. And the trio enter an exhibit room that's full of historical artifacts. And before they can make their way through it, an unsettling croaking noise freezes them in their tracks.
Yep.
And two shambling infected creatures with hideous facial deformities, the blown out mushroom heads, emerge, forcing the trio into hiding.
Yep.
So this is going back. These are our blown out mushroom heads that can see like bats.
These are the split open heads Ellie was asking about. Yeah.
Yeah. This is part of the episode that I was like, oh, this fucking sucks.
This was such a tense scene. I know it only gets worse from here too. It's better, worse, whatever you want to call it. It gets real.
And so Joel quietly, without saying anything, signals Ellie that they can't see, but they can hear.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it's like this, they're just kind of chilling in this spot. And like, it's funny because Ellie's just eyes closed, just like, oh shit, 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 shit. And they're soon discovered when the clicker just kind of appears right in front of them and screams and uses that echolocation, and that's when it's on. So, like, first off, that's just fucking freaky. Secondly, I want to say that the people that they got to do this and the costume design and everything we'll talk about later was just like fantastic.
Yes.
And just like the perfect clicker shamble out there.
Yes.
But like
the movements, the sounds they made, all of it was just perfect.
And just that scream right in the face, and just them having to do something, like, oh God, we have to react.
Just fight their way out after that.
And so Joel goes to fire his gun and at one of the clickers, and it like grapples with him and like grabs the gun, which I was like, oh fuck, that's not in the game. That's like absolutely scary.
Yeah,
like, I didn't know these things could fight back like this.
Yeah, so, that and the fact that he put bullets into this thing's torso, like just rifle rounds right into its center of mass, and this thing just shrugged it off, like barely noticed that it was getting perforated, and grabbed the gun from him. Like,
and it was so close. They were like point blank.
Yeah. So this shit is real.
Yeah, I was like, oh shit. So like, everybody gets separated. Tess runs away with Ellie, and then she gets separated from Ellie and is chased away by the second clicker. And then Joel manages to evade his attacker and regroup with Ellie, but then they're discovered again when they're trying to sneak away, and Joel accidentally steps on glass, and that was such a terrifying scene because it was a pause, and this thing leaps like a banshee onto this table.
Dives across the table on like after them, just like sliding into third base.
Was absolutely nuts. So like, it tackles both of them, and it's basically just trying to bite them. But it's eventually shot to death by Joel, like right in the mushroom head. God, that's the weak spot. And then the second clicker emerges, but Tess reappears and gets it right in the ear with a hatchet. And then Joel gives it the finishing shot with his...
I think he kills the first one with his revolver. He gets the first one in the back of the head with his revolver, and then this was so cool. I love this part because it Tess whacks this thing right in the second clicker, right in the side of its head, and takes out its ear. So it's like you can tell it's disoriented. It's kind of like flailing around and trying to get a sense of where they are. And that's when Joel gets his rifle back and bam, right in the forehead, just puts it down. So this was an amazing scene. Amazing scene.
Just fucking intense.
Yeah. So the dust settles, everyone's kind of regrouping, and they've survived this horrifying life or death encounter. And Ellie realizes that she was actually bitten in the struggle when the first clicker was on top of her and Joel. And there's like a new bite mark, somewhat like on her forearm, I think. And this obviously isn't good news, but she kind of laughs it off. She's casual about it. She just sort of jokes like, well, hey, if it was gonna happen to one of us, it might as well have been me. And Joel doesn't laugh at this, obviously. Why would he? But they pick themselves up again. Tess says that she has a sprained ankle, but otherwise she's fine. And they all move on. They come back out into the daylight on the roof of the museum, and the Capitol building is within view. It's like just right down the road, basically. And it's a beautiful view from the rooftops. And Joel takes a moment to kind of wrap up Tess's sprained ankle. And while he's doing that, he starts expressing concern over Ellie's new bite. He's kind of like, well, hey, she, didn't turn from the first one, but what if this new one? It's just kind of like, it's kind of a pessimism, but it's a survival instinct. It's, he's assuming the worst, and that's what's kept him alive all this time.
I just think it's just, shame once, shame on you twice. Shame on you.
It's like, no, I'm not falling for this a second time, or like,
I'd be like, hey man, I don't know how this shit works. It might have a limit.
It could be like cumulative. Maybe you punched your card.
No one has ever been bitten twice, so this is uncharted territory.
Yeah, like why wouldn't he assume the worst, right? So he's just kind of telling Tess, like, hey, we better, really keep an eye on her after this. And she just kind of snaps at him. She's angry that he won't drop this and just accept that she's immune. She kind of snaps him and says, why can't you just take the good news? Just think for a second that maybe we can win. She's like you said, Lawrence, she's invested now. She really does believe Ellie's immune, and she's, dedicated herself to keeping Ellie safe, and is just sick and tired of Joel's pessimism, I guess. So she kind of pushes him off, and he goes over to Ellie, and they briefly take in the view. They admire the view of the Capitol building, which was a really nice rendition of the scene from the first game where, he asks her, well, is it everything you hoped for? And Ellie just says, well, the jury's still out, but you can't deny that view. So, like, the way they choose what lines to bring back verbatim from the game and put them into the show, they've like, it's all been really good picks. Like, that's a really good one to use. Then they move on when Tess kind of shows up and urges them forward, like, come on, we gotta get moving. So
Yeah, Tess is not happy right now. She is not taking shit from anybody.
Kills the mood a little bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And so they move forward and they make it to the Capitol building with just a bite and a sprained ankle. So pretty successful. Bite on the immune person, sprained ankle on the other person. Joel still just being Joel. And so outside the Capitol building, there's a military truck, which we can assume belongs to the Fireflies that are supposed to be picking up Ellie. But there are no Fireflies there to greet them. So that's not a great sign to start things off. And Joel Joel urges everybody to stay back while he goes and investigates, because Joel is the number one person that should be investigating. Man, took down 2 clickers and a Fedra soldier on the way here. So Joel knows about those, about handling danger.
He knows what he's doing. Yeah.
And so when he opens up the truck, and you can see there's blood in there, and they kind of pass over it until they get to the back of the truck. They open it up and no one's there. And then Ellie notices some blood stains that are leading inside of the Capitol building. And so they decide to move it, go inside. But to Tessa's horror, there's just a group of dead Fireflies on the ground, like scattered about. They ask, like, hey, is this, did Fedra do this? That's because that is how it happens in the video game.
Mm-hmm.
But Joel pretty much surmises that one or more of the Fireflies must have been infected on the journey here, because you can also surmise that the person that was like slashed up in the museum was a Firefly soldier.
Probably one of them, yeah.
Yeah, so they probably were infected, escaping those clickers. Instead of doing the Joel thing and just killing them, hey,
right.
Why not?
Yeah.
Remember the don't lose.
They should have just followed the don't lose strategy.
Yeah,
been thorough.
Yeah, they lost because they decided to.
Losing is a decision. Remember that, kids.
Yes. So don't lose, especially not against clickers. Come on now, that's weak sauce.
Yeah. You don't want that.
So like they kind of surmise that like one or more of the people were infected, and then basically it was infected versus non-infected, and nobody wins. It's like anti-vaxxers versus vaxxers when you guys fight. Nobody wins those arguments on Facebook.
That's true. That's very true.
Just stay in your lane. But no, they ended up just fighting each other, and everybody died. And so Joel's like, the healthy ones fought the sick ones, and they all lost. And while like desperate and frustrated, Tess searches for like a radio or a map or something that they can use to continue this mission, which is like strange because like that they're at the end of the road. There's like not really a car battery or anything. I mean, I guess they could technically take the goddamn truck outside, but
there's a truck right there. Yeah.
No one, there's your prize right there. The truck, everybody's dead, but whatever. They don't really have a reason to do anything anymore. Like Joel and Tess are smugglers. I'm getting paid to do a job. The job is no longer feasible anymore. So I stopped doing it. That's just how that works.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's not, Tess is very, very, she's pissed off. And so Joel's like, hey, let's just cut our losses and go home. And then Tess angrily replies that the QZ isn't her home and that she's not going anywhere.
Right.
To which we get a familiar scene from the video game where Ellie is like, holy shit, she's infected.
Yeah, Ellie's the one to make the assumption and just say it out loud. And just, well, you're acting like you don't have much time left. And just says, oh, you're infected. And Tess doesn't deny it. And Joel is just kind of stunned and asks Tess to show him, like, let me see it. Let me see it. And she opens her shirt and we can see a bite mark on her upper shoulder, not far from her neck really, and it's already starting to show signs of like contusion, and it's progressing. It's getting red and swollen and gross looking and not good. And so Tess just kind of, is like, oops, right? Luck had to run out sooner or later, and just, she gets passionate though. Like her energy's ramping up when she walks over to Ellie's arm and holds it up and shows the fresh bite mark that she just got, back in the museum, and then kind of compares it to her fresh bite mark. Like they happened at the same time, and mine's getting worse, hers isn't. This is fucking real, is what she's kind of like getting across to Joel. Like, she is for real. She is immune. You got to believe me now. And she knows that she's short on time, so she's imploring Joel, take it all the way, take it the rest of the way. Get Ellie over to Bill and Frank, friends of theirs. They can take her from you. They can get her to where she needs to go. And the entire time, Joel's trying to like kind of talk her down. Like he's reluctant. Like, I'm not doing that. No, they won't take her, yada, yada. And she just overpowers him by bearing her soul. She starts sharing things she's never said out loud about how she feels.
Yep.
Something like, I never asked you for anything. I never asked you to feel the way I felt. Shut the fuck up because I don't have time. She's just kind of getting it all out there. It's one of those moments like there's no more time to leave things unsaid and leave things halfway. Like, so we can get from this that in their years they've spent as friends, partners, roommates, whatever, there have been feelings that Tess had for Joel that either he didn't reciprocate at all or just not in the way that she wanted. And this is kind of her making this final plea. Like, if there was ever anything between us, you need to do this for me. And she also makes the case to him, we've done horrible things to survive over the years, and this is our chance to do something good. I believe the quote is like, you can make up for all the shit we did over the years.
Yes.
It's Joel has no answer for this. He's just blankly staring back at Tess, and it's very subtle, but Pedro Pascal does this amazing work of like, he's like clenching his jaw, unclenching it. His eyes are twitching just a tiny bit, where he's like struggling with what to say and what to do with all this. It's a very intense scene. It's very emotional. It's very charged and weighted. So,
because what I love about him and like how he captures Joel is like he just pushes everything down. And you can see him just pulling himself away from the situation. And then like on the opposite end, Tess knows that she can't do that anymore. Like this is it. So like she's just like lamenting on their survival, like all of that stuff that they were so used to just, like whatever, we had to survive. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, we did some shit. Like we did some shit. So like, let us do something good for once. I loved this scene. I like so few words, but it was so powerful.
It was really good. Yeah.
And so, like, at the same time as, as all of this is going on, an infected firefly, previously thought dead, kind of just gets up and startles the shit out of Ellie. And then Joel just, I got to escape this situation somehow, puts it down.
He's like, oh, finally a topic change.
I can, this is my way out of this conversation. And so shooting it, triggers the hive mind response. You can see like the vines wrap around its like hands, and then all of those like human centipede infected folks on the long path basically get up because they're like, oh, dinner's arrived. And so a horde of infected creatures just starts to rush towards them, which they realize, and they're like, we have like less than a minute to get the hell out of here. So Tess does the honorable thing, after saying like, hey, we have to do something. She decides to sacrifice herself to buy time for Joel and Ellie. So she starts spilling fuel and explosives like all around the room, just these barrels of fuel, all these grenades, etc. And then she approaches Joel and gives him the parting words, save who you can save. And he does it. he just gives her that look, and then he pulls Ellie away, and they make a run for it, and Ellie is just pissed. Like it's not really pissed, but Ellie is just sad,
upset at leaving Tess behind.
Yeah, and just kind of throwing. She just wants to save Tess, but it's just like that survivor's guilt.
I think she accepts on some level. There's nothing she can do, but Ellie is obviously very upset about the idea of someone else dying on her, like someone else leaving her life and having to leave someone behind. It's tense, yeah. So Joel and Ellie make a run for it, and Tess bravely stays behind and starts getting her lighter out, trying to spark it off to set off this trap that she's made. And there's no time left because infected people are just pouring into the Capitol building, starting to surround her, and the lighter's not working. The tension is like at its peak here, where she's desperately trying to light the lighter, and the terror on her face, it's palpable, because I've praised Anna Torv's performance of Tess before, and she nailed it again here. She did so well with this scene where it's just pure helplessness and desperation on her face as the infected, they're not swarming her and attacking her violently, strangely enough. They're just kind of crowding around slowly. This is just a theory of mine, but I feel like it's pretty plausible, is that they can tell she's infected. They can tell that she's pretty close to turning. And so it's just, oh, this is one of us, I think. And this one infected person who looks like he has mushroom antlers growing out of his head, is just getting closer and sort of like slowly approaching her. And again, she's backed into her corner now. She's up against the wall, still trying to work the lighter. And this thing slowly starts extending tendrils from its mouth and into hers. It's like putting his mouth on hers. And she's just rooted to the spot as this is happening. And the infection starts to take hold. Like, you can tell she's literally moments away from turning and losing her mind entirely. And at the last second, she manages to ignite the lighter, and it drops from her trembling hands, and she closes her eyes, and a second later, explosion just incinerates the entire infected horde. Fireballs leap out of the building as Joel and Ellie are trying to run away, and they look back and see the fire erupt from the building. It's just such a dramatic scene, and Joel and Ellie, all they can do is just look on in shocked horror as Tess makes this fiery sacrifice. And we've kind of alluded to this before, but it's this selflessness, the ultimate selflessness that Tess was ready to do and was asking Joel to be ready to do as well. Like, we've been selfish all these years, but we're finally able to do something truly selfless and do something good. And she kind of leads by example. I'm not just asking you to do something selfless. I'm going to do something selfless too. And it's this dramatic send-off. And Joel just kind of looks at it for just a moment. He's like pausing and looking back on his friend's death. And he doesn't take long, though. Before long, he turns around and starts walking away. And Ellie takes a little bit longer of a pause, and she actually takes a very deep breath. And it's fun. What's interesting is my wife actually pointed this out to me. We were watching this episode together once, and she says that's actually a very common grounding technique. If like you're going through something traumatic and you just need to center yourself, it's a deep breath to take a moment and come back to reality and compartmentalize. And but it's like this dichotomy between Ellie trying to process something that she just went through and Joel just shutting it down and moving on. It's like the two approaches, I guess. But yeah, Ellie takes that breath and goes on to join him.
You can almost hear Tess in the background shout, "Moab!"
Oh my God!
No,
no, you can actually see the numbers appearing above the Capitol building where she's getting her kill streak for taking out so many infected at once. She can call in the chopper gunner now.
Yeah, mother of all bombs, gotcha. No, and like also, you know what this means. Then there were two.
Oh my God, there it is again.
Twos. Second episode, all about the twos, man.
Back to the twos.
Yeah, it's a sign. I don't know what it means. You could even, if you really wanted to go really, well, actually, no, that wouldn't make sense. Never mind. I was going to have something else. I was going to be like, oh, if you want to go with twos. But no, it wouldn't work. But those is just like you're going back to what you were saying.
Mhm.
It is crazy to see that the dichotomy between Joel and Ellie. Like Ellie is just this is the world that she's always grown up in, so
Yeah.
it's a little bit it's somewhat normal, but like who can process this world better than someone who this is the only thing that they've known? Like Joel can't process this shit. He's lived here 20 years and it's like my way of processing is surviving. Like
Yeah.
he's literally watched possibly a lover or at least best friend just ask him to do something and the only thing he could do is like just like kind of not process, just like pull away.
Yeah.
And then we just see him at the very end, just kind of look back once, and it's just like, well, this sucks and it hurts,
Yeah.
but I don't know what to feel about this. So like, Tess is dead. We have to go. I got to do this thing for Tess now, and it's just, I don't know. It's kind of just it's interesting. It's just powerful because like, yeah, Joel can basically experience this loss that of someone that is like really close to him, and it basically doesn't visibly affect him. It just all kind of goes down into this pit inside of him.
That is closing credits on episode 2, Infected. So that's our recap, and we're going to get into our overall impressions, our thoughts on this episode next. But first, another quick break to hear from our sponsors. We'll be right back, so don't go anywhere. Okay, we're back, and it's time for our thoughts, our kind of, I guess, reflection portion on episode 2 of the HBO The Last of Us series. I'll go ahead and kick us off. I have a few things, just overall thoughts on this episode. Just generally, again, the visuals continue to be amazing in this episode. I really liked the opening scene of Ellie in that patch of sunlight, the view of the Capitol building from the museum, and kind of related is the banter between Ellie and Tess and Joel was great. It really captured that spirit of the game, the smart aleck attitude, the dialogue that it really evokes the energy from the game really well. So that was fun to listen to. And they work some really cool character foreshadowing and action foreshadowing into the dialogue though. So it all served a purpose. And we talked about this earlier, but I'll just reiterate the clicker scene, the reveal and the fight scene. It's exactly what I would have wanted from it. It was so tense and visceral, and it had like a horror movie vibe to it that didn't overstay its welcome. It was like just this little departure from drama territory into action horror territory. It was awesome. But yeah, so like I was concerned going into that clicker scene. I was like concerned for a minute, like, oh, they're just gonna escape and run away from the clickers and get away from them, and they're not going to kill them, because what I love about the game is like these terrifying threats that are hard to deal with, and they're hard to kill, and they're very dangerous. They can kill you very easily, but when you overcome them and finish them off, it's very satisfying. And so when that's what happened, I was like, oh man, they fucking killed the clickers. It was so fun to watch. It was so satisfying.
Yeah.
And just it was really great. And there were actually, departures from the game in this episode. There were things they changed that I thought were for the better.
Yeah,
like
100%.
Yeah. So in the game at the Capitol building, they, find out that the Fireflies were killed by Fedra soldiers. And then more soldiers arrive and chase them away. And that's when Tess kind of sacrifices herself. That's what happened in the game. But I think changing it to a horde of infected being the threat that Tess sacrifices herself against, and it makes more sense narratively because it feels more logically consistent. Like how, I guess with the view of ruined Boston that we got in the show, I would have had a hard time buying a bunch of soldiers just showing up right then when, Tess and Joel and Ellie had such a hard time getting through the city to get there,
Yeah. And I'd say like even adding on to that, like what sense would it make to pursue someone that far out of a QZ zone? You don't want them to, you just don't want people in the quarantine zone. But like Federa was never about trying to retake land. They're about maintaining.
Yeah. What do they gain by going all the way to the Capitol building just to kill the Fireflies? I guess
for no reason. So like it does make more sense narratively, like, and it gives Tess a better death. I
think so too. I know that's a controversy, and we'll get to that later. Like, that's actually kind of a polarizing polarizing concept of, you know, whether Tess's death was better in the game or the show. But no, I'm with you there. But yeah, put a pin in that. I want to talk about that. So
Yes.
the other thing that was different from the game is that in the game, I think you mentioned this earlier, is that the infected in the game, they don't have a hive mind. They don't like they're not like connected across distances like they are in the show, or at
No.
least not in that way. I
They
think,
on- they only work together in a group. So
yeah,
like a clicker can detect something and scream, and then
hmm
like runners will go, but like
right.
that is just teamwork,
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
all just based on noise. Like the only
Yeah.
reason large groups of infected do anything together in the game is if like noise or, you know, something like that attracts them all. But in the show, they kind of added this hive mind concept to them, which I didn't expect that, you know, going into this episode, but it made sense. I think it works in this type of format where like they need to sort of it's a little bit more sci-fi. I guess it's like a slightly more stylized choice than just making it all based on sound or whatever. But
Well, also, like I'm not a mycologist at all. But
true,
like it actually like mimics like what mushrooms actually do. Like mushrooms can do that. Like
that is true. That's a good
mushrooms
point.
can create like a widespread network
Mhm.
over like vast distances. Like I've seen
Right.
something like that. Like there are like particular mushrooms or all mushrooms, I have no idea, but they can basically just like create a very long network of mushrooms for miles.
That's a good point. Like it's not necessarily that mushrooms in our real world can like literally talk to each other, but they do kind of they are able to experience stimuli together. They kind of share information. It's almost like a nervous system that mushrooms are able to create with each other. So that's actually a good point. That does put the infected of the show in context. Like, no, they kind of share information that way. So no, yeah, changes that I thought, you know, make things interesting, keep things a little bit different. You know, it's not one to one, but it's, you know, changes for the better. So one other thing I thought was interesting is that this was actually pointed out to me, or I realized this after my first viewing of the episode. So it was like, I think on my second watch, that in the game, it's implied that the cordyceps plague was first detected in South America, like crops down from South America that made their way into the States, the U.S., through
Yep.
imports. But in the show, it's now more about flour and grain, specifically like flour and grain products from Southeast Asia. And I actually found out there's a pretty interesting fan theory about that, where in the first episode, Joel and his family, it's theorized that the reason they weren't infected at the beginning was that they actually they avoided eating flour products. Because if you look at the first episode, Joel usually has pancakes on his birthday, but Sarah's making eggs, and she's, you know, Tommy comes home and he's like, "What? No pancakes?" He goes, "Nah, no pancakes today. We didn't have any." And also, Joel
And no
doesn't get a
cake.
birthday cake. Doesn't eat cake on
Yep.
his birthday. So it's funny, like if the infection came to the States from flour that came from, like, you know, in Indonesia, and it's just pure blind luck that the Miller family didn't eat flour products that day or whatever. It's pretty interesting. It's cool to think about.
Yeah, definitely. Like it's fake. 'Cause I imagine like it was, you know, like flour and you know bread and like some other products too, like some other crops. I think it was like
Hmm.
in the game they had like newspaper thing, or it was like there was like a list of banned crops. But
Yeah,
I do like that. I do like that. You know, kind of confirmation that like yeah, a big source of this was like, you know, flour products like this,
yeah,
and like that encompasses so many different things. And so like to
yeah,
think about how close they were to just being infected, and like, you
yeah.
know, it's even funnier if you think about it. I just thought about this right now. The first episode, they're the Adlers.
Hmm.
They're like basically, you know, pushing bread into grandma's mouth in the beginning when they're
Yeah,
taking, you know, Sarah to school.
yeah. Danny Adler
So
offers
like,
them biscuits, which they don't take, and also later Connie Adler's making cookies, which Sarah doesn't eat.
yep.
So yeah, no, it's everywhere. That's crazy. What's really cool about the flour thing is that it does help explain how the infection ends up in so many cities all at once. Like
Yeah.
if the infection was only spread through bites, or, infected blood or saliva or whatever, like if it had to be bitten by a person to be spread, it would not be the same type of threat that it was at the beginning of the outbreak, because it
Yep.
was everywhere. It was like nationwide, because it was in the food and people didn't realize it was in the food
Yeah.
until it was too late. And there were major cities all across the country that were just teeming with infected. So it's scary. It's again one of those things, like, what's so gripping about this show is that it's scary because it could come true.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the case in the first episode with the scientists theorizing about, cordyceps evolving to survive higher temperatures because of global warming. And then you think about, flour, so much food that we eat has, wheat products in it. I guess if you avoid gluten, you're okay, but I don't. So
Yeah,
I'd be screwed.
I'd have been so screwed.
Yeah, that's one thing that the plausibility makes it particularly frightening. So yeah, those were kind of the high level points I had. There is one last thing I wanted to touch on for this episode, but we could save that for after. It has to do with Tessa's demise. I know that there's been some discourse about that. I'll give you a chance to go through your thoughts first if you want to save that for
Okay.
last.
Yeah. So my thoughts on this episode. My thoughts on this episode kind of center around that point, but like I've got some other things. I will say that like I really appreciated what I appreciated a lot about this was just the context that was provided, like the show opening. Like that was such a powerful thing to do. Like it doesn't like we know what happened. We know an infection came in 2003, and we know that it like struck out of nowhere and the military had to bomb cities, et cetera, et cetera. But it is really cool to see like we don't as like players of the game, you only think about it being like, oh my god, the infection was this like it just smacked the world in the face out of nowhere, like one night it was just fucking crazy. But it's actually interesting to see like no, this infection progressed from something that was very small to something that grew rapidly on its own. Like, and it wasn't just one person randomly getting infected and biting everybody. It was people eating some food, and then slowly turning and then infecting other people. So, like, I think that a lot of what it feels like is some of the minute changes that came were probably things that were just like I wouldn't say like planned for the game, but probably like background notes that they had for just for world building, like that like developers could work off of. Because like having it where what I really liked about having that kind of like connected system makes a lot more sense. Where it's like, okay, hey, you can get rushed because you step on a vine. It's just like, okay, how do we develop that, and like, make the game, playable and like not too hard in the very end. But like, I liked a lot of those changes. I liked that the infected were kind of connected and were waiting. I like because it's like then it's like it explains like, okay, how come there was no military occupation or like some effective military occupation, and it's like because these things, the way that they act is like really unpredictable. Like you can get swarmed by stepping on a vine. Clickers are like pretty much hard bodies, so you can't like just gun them all down. Like you're gonna get swarmed while you're trying to kill these things. So it makes a lot of sense. And even the point that they added about how the city gets overtaken a little bit more each year because people are trying to make it into the quarantine zone, and then they take shelter in a building, and that drives the infected like out because they come and get these people, and so then you get infected in the streets, and then they wait for more people. Yeah, so it's a very deliberate. It seems like a very deliberate infection. Like it's like it makes it's like there seems to be more like logic to it. So I really did like those changes. Also, I love Tess. Tess was one of my favorite characters, and they did Tess justice. Like they really did Tess justice because she was a character that didn't last very long on the show or in the game, and like we got to cut out where they cut out a lot of her more particular badass moments from the
Yeah.
game,
Yeah.
where she was just kind of like take no prisoners, just like shoot you in the head. But what you got back in this is like a more realistic, like
Yeah.
hardened person. But keyword is person. Like she is hardened,
Hmm.
she is resourceful, she's crafty, she's
Yeah.
intelligent. She's calling the shots. But at the end of the day, she's a person, and like you see that like towards the end, like she has a lot of humanity. She wants to help Ellie, and she's wanted to help Ellie since they found out that she
Yeah.
was immune, because she knew that like the potential good. I don't think this episode for her was ever about a car battery as much as it was for doing the right thing,
Right.
something that would help, potentially help everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I also I also really liked Tessa's ending. I thought it was done very well. I thought it was just the right amount, the right kind of stakes, the right amount of dramatic energy, the right it hit the right notes. I bring this up because like I said, I have noticed there was a bit of controversy about this scene. Like the way, again, the way she died in the game was pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Just the soldiers are here. I'll buy you with some time. I'll hold them off. And she dies in a gunfight with some Fed goons, and that's all that happens. And in the show, we now have this. It's been called the kissing scene, where the infected, puts his mouth on hers, and the tendrils and all that. I've seen some people were a little grossed out how it's even been labeled as a scene that was sexualized, and it's I've also seen some people say that, oh, this ending took away Tess's agency. And I want to acknowledge the discourse about it. Like I just respectfully disagree. I just respectfully, I think you're with me on this, is that no, this was perfectly in line with her character, and it was the right call in terms of communicating how this infection works in the context of the show. Because like we've talked about, the networked consciousness, the kind of hive mind of these infected, and how obviously when they came up to her, they could tell she was about to turn. So it was this whole thing of like, she wasn't fighting back, so they weren't fighting her. And I think even the showrunners, I think there was actually a statement by Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin that was like, the infected will only, be violent if the person they're trying to turn resists them. That's why clickers are so violent. And also just, it's kind of like meant to be creepy, because that's the point of a horror show, where it's like, no, this is something you don't want to happen to you. This is obviously a bad thing to happen to you, and it's scary for a reason. But, and I guess my last thing I'll say about this is like, no, Tess showed tremendous amounts of agency in this ending scene, because she took the initiative to set up the conditions to destroy this entire horde of infected, which would make Joel and Ellie safer. And, that's kind of more badass than her death in the game, because in the game she only killed a couple soldiers. In the show she killed dozens, maybe hundreds of infected creatures. So it's like, what was the bigger sacrifice play? And her agency was still very strong. Like it was like, still, I'm going to go out on my terms by blowing up myself with all these infected, no matter what happens to me, even if I'm getting tendrils put down my throat and like I'm being turned forcibly. And I argue that she was still herself, on some level at least, right up until the last moment, because she closed her eyes as she dropped the lighter. So she was still choosing, like, this is the ending I'm choosing for myself. This is it. And so, no, I stand by it. It was a beautiful scene. I thought it was done really well. I will acknowledge that, yeah, there's a gross out factor to that. The show took a relatively simple death scene of getting shot by soldiers and turned it into something that was a bit more creepy, a bit more off-putting. I'll give you that. Like, it definitely was creepy, but it's kind of like, yeah, those are the stakes of a dramatic show that, has to communicate to you, hey, this is a bad ending, but it's the ending she chose, and it had an upside, meaning she, destroyed this obstacle that allowed her friend and the girl that she thinks could be the hope of the world to survive. So, no, that's my final thought. I thought, like, there is a discourse about it, but that's my position, is that I think it was a beautiful, well-written scene. So
See, yeah,
It's just how I feel about
my
it.
thought on it is like, if you feel like the it did rob Tess of her agency, like I won't say anything about that because I'm like have like if you have that opinion, like then I
Mm.
respect that opinion because like that's how you feel. Um,
Sure.
how I interpreted the scene,
Mm.
the reason I liked this direction that they went in was because I always felt like Tess deserved more because she did so much in the beginning of the game, and like
Mm.
we see this person who like some things they leave out that was in the game, like Tess just shoots a dude in the head after he is basically just like
Yeah.
won't get out of her way, and he's just like just throwing the just all sorts of shit and just like shit at her, and she just shoots him in the head, and like that's and then like they torture Robert, and just she gives him two in the head, and
Yeah.
it's like she's just like a badass, like she is badass, take no prisoner. What the show
Yeah.
does is they're making these Joel and Tess more realistic, like they're older, and one of the things I appreciated about this episode was
Mm.
like we got to see that with Tess. Like she felt like a real older person. Like she's a survivalist and she is crafty, but she is also getting up there in age, and so is Joel. So like a
Yeah.
little bit of that like video game badassness was replaced with just like general humanity, and like Tess hit a clicker in the fucking ear with the damn hatchet. Like she can
Mm-hmm.
still hold her own.
Mm-hmm.
The ending scene to me gave her what she deserved in the game, which was a good death. Like
Mm.
in the game, she dies off screen for the most part, and
Yeah.
she only takes out two soldiers.
Yeah.
And uh, like it doesn't stop the pursuit like
Right.
at all. And so
Right.
it's like Tess gets here, she's badass, she's badass, she's badass, and then like these last moments, she spills her soul, and then she gets killed off screen for the most part,
Yeah.
and like to
Basically.
me that always sucked because I was
Yeah.
like she deserves more because she did so much, and she's the sole reason that this whole thing kicks off.
Mm-hmm.
Like because Joel wasn't going to do it, he didn't, he
Yeah.
wasn't going to do this. She was what motivated the entire quest, and so I felt like she deserved more. And like I get it. The tendril thing was weird. It was in it. It's like it's weird, and like I don't want to justify it for anybody. Just more other than like it's like we haven't seen tendrils come at any other spot. Like even when Grandma Adler was eating somebody, she had the
True.
tendrils coming out of her mouth.
That's true.
So it's like the tendrils is the method of spreading the infection, and like some of the changes that we've seen suggest that the infected prioritize infecting.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like for the most part they prioritize infecting and eating. That's what like they tore the one guy up, but like they were like not going to tear up Tess, who hadn't totally turned yet. Because like in the game, it's like you get bit, they don't stop. They're gonna just rip you apart. Like so in the game they it seems like it seems more clear in the show that they are prioritizing infecting people and like sustaining themselves on people.
Right.
So I did like it where it's like, okay, we're going to show you now that like the infected are not going to rip somebody apart who is infected and is not like
Mm-hmm.
does not pose a threat to them. So I think like that scene to me, I liked it because it gave Tess an opportunity to it gave her a better death, and it let her stand on the principles the principles and the moral change that she displayed at the very
Mm-hmm.
end of
Mm-hmm.
her life. Like she was like, we're shitty people, but like we don't have to be. We can be better than that. And
Yeah.
she fucking showed it. And like she shows it in the game, but they don't give her a good death. And the show was like, no, I'm
Mm-hmm.
saving this girl that I have been in the background really focused on protecting, and this dude that I
Yeah.
have feelings for, but I have
Right.
never asked anything from. I am going to make this sacrifice play, but what I expect out of him
Mm-hmm.
is that he
Mm-hmm.
continues this shit on and protects this kid. So my death is not for nothing.
Yeah.
In the game, she was just like, I will not turn into one of those monsters, which was
Mm-hmm.
still great. But in the show, it was
Yeah.
like, save who you can save. And so like I loved that. So like, yeah, I get it if you don't like that scene. Nothing, no right or wrong answers here. It's just like, this is my interpretation of it.
Yeah. Like I can't make anyone feel like the same way I feel about any type of media. So it's just like, yeah, these are all very subjective things, but just the way I see it, I'm with you there. I think it was just a more impactful death, and you know how it works with different media. Like in the medium of video games, it kind of made sense for Joel, like as the player character, Joel is in another room taking Ellie away. And so Tess, kind of dying off screen on her own back there, like you kind of have to do it that way, but just because of the way player characters versus NPCs work. But with a TV show, you can put the camera on Tess and like give her that spotlight and give her that dramatic, impactful sacrifice that makes more sense narratively. So it's like, things are always going to be different going from one medium to the other. But I think in this case, it was a really good translation. It was a really good adjustment.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, the conversation about Tess was actually something that was very, very talked about. I think that was probably the most talked about aspect of this episode, just because, the major changes from the video game, and, the conversation about if this was a, better or worse ending for Tess. I think there's a lot, there's a lot that we could unpack here, but we definitely encourage all of the listeners of the podcast to email us at podcast@lordparty.com with their thoughts. Like, tell us what you think about Tess's demise, if you're a video game player or a non-video game player, and we will definitely put that on the show, because it is interesting, and I know that everybody has an opinion, and I definitely want to be respectful of everybody's different opinions on this matter. So yeah, I think this is probably a good area to end it. Well, that about wraps it up. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please take a second to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps us grow the show. Be sure to connect with us on Twitch, Instagram, and Twitter at lore_party. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.